Thank you for joining me today. I want to show you how to draw a flower. It's popular for the holiday season. It's called a poinsettia, and we'll go step by step. I'll show you exactly how I draw it, and we'll do it simple first and then add the details and make it more realistic in the end. All right, let's get started. So first we want to make two circles, one for the center of the flower and one for a guideline for the edge of the flowers or the petals. And this is just a general guideline. You don't have to stick to that. You can go past it. You can go just before it, whatever works best for you. Then next, we're going to build the petals by creating a bunch of teardrop shapes. In the center of the flower, the petals are a lot smaller, and then on the outside, the petals are going to be a lot bigger. Also think about layering. Some of the petals are on top of others, so consider whether they are above or below, and think about how each petal will react or look next to the other petals. We'll also add some leaves, and some of the leaves are similar shape, teardrop shape, and other leaves kind of have a maple leaf to it where you have multiple points. If you're looking at a reference, you can just copy what you see, or if you want to be creative, just create your own shapes and your own leaves and petals. Some of the petals, you'll see the stem going to the center of the flower, and some you will not. So depending on the placement of your petals will depend on whether you see the stem, so pay attention to that. And it's okay to make adjustments as you go. So if you find that you accidentally drew one of the petals wrong, go in and fix it, erase. This is just the sketching part where we're trying to build up our shapes. Once we get the shapes built up, I like to go through and erase some of the reference lines that I created just to clean it up a bit. Next, we're going to start creating some of the texture. You can use a mechanical pencil. The pencil I have has a darker lead, a softer lead, so it tends to put too much darkness down for my liking, especially when I want to make the petals look a little softer, a little lighter. And so you can see it creates very dark lines. So if that's the effect you want to go for, I would suggest using a mechanical pencil with the darker lead. I use an electric eraser, especially when I'm using mechanical pencils, because it erases it really well. I don't have to put a lot of pressure on the paper, so it's very nice to do some very specific erasing. Mechanical pencils are really good at getting some really nice fine detail. So I'm switching my pencil to the H pencil. It is a harder pencil, so the graphite's going to be a little lighter, and I think this is the effect that I want to go for, just so that I can keep the petals nice and soft. So fill in all the lines. You'll notice on this type of flower, you can see how the lines are similar to leaves in that they start from the center and go out to the edge. And there's quite a few lines, I guess you can call them veins. You'll notice a lot of these veins sometimes start from the same point in the center of the petal, and sometimes they're just slightly off-centered. So play around, make it look a little bit different on each one. It doesn't have to be 100% exact. Look at your reference and just observe how each of those lines move across the petal. The veins on the leaf is similar. They have a little more detail. You'll see how some of the veins kind of branch off, similar to how you would draw a lightning bolt, and then sometimes they connect to each other. And so I added a little bit more detail on the leaves, just because we want to have that contrast between the really soft petals and the detailed darker leaves. Look at your reference and see how the veins on a leaves act. You don't have to make it exactly how you see it on your reference. You can if you want. I just sort of mimic the idea on how they look, and so I just made it up as I went. Drawing in the details for the veins of the petals and the leaves could feel a little tedious, but in the end it's going to look really nice, especially when we start to shade. I have another video that talks about drawing plants, and so check that one out if you want a little more instruction on how to draw plants. So now we're going to start shading our flower. And first I'm going to start from the center and shade the little beads. And maybe those are seeds. I'm not 100% sure, but I think they are. So I'm only going to slightly shade the edge that is going to be in our shadow. Our light is going to be coming from the top, and so the bottom part is going to be darker, and there's going to be a little highlight on the top. And so I'm just going to slightly darken the bottom of the ball to create the effect of a sphere. And I'm using a 2B pencil for this part. It's a softer pencil, and so it creates a darker graphite look. So I'm thinking about how the light shines down onto the flower, and how below the petals it's going to be a little darker. So on the stems, on the bottom part of the stem, it's going to be darker, and I'm going to leave a little bit of the stem on the top without any graphite to create the effect of a highlight. Next, I am going to think about how the leaves and the petals create a shadow on top of each other, since we have the light hitting the top, and it's going to create a little drop shadow onto each of the petals and leaves. So I'm going to go through and kind of mark how I think that would look. If you're looking at a reference, then you can look at the shadows and see how dark the shadows are, and see how wide or how they interact with each other. You'll notice that when the petals are closer to each other, the shadow is going to be a lot darker. If the petal and the leaves are further from each other, the shadow is going to be a lot lighter and more blurry. So the edge of the shadow is going to be more of a gradient, and if they're closer, the edge of the shadow is going to be a lot harder. So I'm going to start shading those in, still using a 2B pencil, and you'll start to see how some of those petals kind of pop out. You can see some depth. So I'm going to use a kneaded eraser to lighten up the parts, the petals that I use the mechanical pencil on, just so I can lighten it up and make it look similar to my other petals. The great thing about a kneaded eraser is you can just tap it, tap your paper. You can just roll it across and it just lifts a little bit of the graphite up. Now I'm going to start shading the petals, and I'm thinking about how where the veins are indented, and so there's going to be a slight shadow where the indent starts and how it goes up and over to the next indent or vein. And so I'm going to create a darker shadow on the bottom part, because I'm still considering where the light's coming from. And so I'm going to create a nice darker line next to the indent. And then later on we'll go in and shade or push the graphite over to create a rounded look. I'm using a blending stump so I can create a really nice soft layer or a soft effect for the petals. And if you find that the blending has made your petals too dark, you can go back through with the kneaded eraser and lift up a layer of the graphite. So this process is going to be repeated throughout all the petals. And so think about how the light hits the petal, where the shadows are, where the darkest parts are, and then continue to adjust as you go through, and keep looking at your reference and see how the light reacts to the petals in your reference. On the bigger petals, I'm kind of putting a little bit of the graphite down in the center just to create some texture, make it look a little bumpy. It is a smooth petal, but you'll notice that if the light hits it just right, you'll see it's kind of bumpy as well. So it's soft, sometimes bumpy, especially when the petal gets a lot bigger. You can see that. The blending stump that I'm using has a kind of like a rubber end, and it's really nice. It pushes the graphite pretty nicely, and it's easy to clean it off, so I can come back with a fresh blending stump. So after I put the layer of graphite down, it's still too dark for me, so I'm going to use the kneaded eraser to lighten it up and make it look a little softer. When I use a blending stump, I like to push in one direction, just because I think it creates a smoother transition, and it doesn't create any kind of unwanted marks that I'd have to go back in and fix or erase. Repeat the process for each petal, and on the larger petals, the ones that are more exposed to the light, you can lighten up even more so that there's a nice contrast to the interior where it's covered, to the exterior of the petal where it's more exposed to light, so the highlights are going to be a lot brighter. On these bigger petals, when I go back through and use the kneaded eraser to pick up a layer, I like to go back through the veins and use the very tip of my pencil to darken in those veins, just because it creates this nice contrast between the vein and the petal. If you want to make those veins more subtle, if that's the look you're going for, then go for it, and that's okay. When drawing detailed images like this, sometimes I jump around. I'll jump from a leaf to a petal to other things, but I find that when I stay more focused and I stick to one part of the drawing to finish it up, it tends to look better, because if I want to make all the petals look similar, it's better for me to stick with the petals first. That way they have a similar look and I don't have to try to remember how I did the last petal. And so for me, I noticed that sticking to one part of the drawing and then moving on to the next makes it a little easier to keep everything consistent. So now I'm going to shade the leaves, and with the veins on the leaves, I used a 4B pencil and really darkened up those veins just because I like that look. And then I used my 2B pencil to roughly shade, put a layer of shading down. And the concept is similar to the petals, where there's a slight bump from where the vein is as it lifts to the center in between each vein. And so I tried to add a little bit of the shading between each of the veins so that it kind of creates a bumpy look. I didn't use a blending stump on the leaves because I wanted to create two different types of textures, and so I left the leaves a little more rough, not as smooth as the petals, just because I like that contrast. And so, like I said before, to keep things more consistent, I went through and did all the veins first, and then I came back through with my other pencil to shade in the rest. You can go back through and clean up the edges of your leaves just to make them look a little more realistic, and clean up any kind of lines or shading that went outside the edges. I use a brush to move the eraser out of the way so that I don't use my hand and smear the graphite across my paper. The brush is really nice to move the eraser pieces out of the way. I'm going to go back through with my electric eraser to clean up any lines or shading mistakes, just to clean it up and make it look real sharp on the edges. And once we're done, any final touches such as erasing some smear marks or any other unwanted lines. And of course, when you're done, sign your artwork. Thanks for watching this video. I hope you were able to get some value out of this and were able to draw a really nice picture. And please comment below if you have any questions or if you have any requests on things you'd like to learn how to draw. And please like and subscribe and check out these other videos I have. They cover the fundamentals of drawing and as well as other drawing challenges.